Elias Mar had walked into strange places before, but the Zarathi throne world made every other world feel plain. The sky above the capital was not a simple blue. It was pale silver, like light poured into the air, and thin streams of color moved through it as if the sky itself was breathing. Tall crystal spires rose from the city in quiet lines. They caught the light and spread it in soft patterns across the streets. Even the ground felt alive. The walkway under Elias' boots was smooth, warm, and slightly springy, as if it remembered every step taken on it. He tried not to look nervous, but his stomach tightened anyway. He was a human envoy. He was trained to keep his face calm, his voice steady, and his mind clear. Still, this world had a way of making him feel very small. The summons had arrived only 2 hours ago, delivered by a Zarathi courier drone that spoke in perfect human standard. By order of Her Radiance, Queen Salith, Elias Mar is required at the inner hall at once. No greeting, no polite message, no explanation. That alone was unusual. The Zarathi were famous for their careful manners. Their diplomacy was slow and smooth, like water over stone. Their queen was known across the civilized systems as a steady ruler. She rarely showed strong emotion in public. People said her mind moved like a star map, wide, bright, and patient. But the message that followed the summons had spread through the embassy with the speed of fear. The queen is furious. Nobody knew why, not the human staff, not the alien aides assigned to the embassy, not even the trade officials who normally heard every rumor before it became real. The only thing they knew was that the request was not a request, it was a command. Now Elias walked between 2 Zarathi guards. They were tall and elegant, their bodies covered in fine plates that looked like polished glass. Their eyes were dark and calm. Their steps were silent. They held no visible weapons. The Zarathi rarely carried weapons in court, and their guards did not need to show force to be dangerous. But Elias had been told again and again that Zarathi court was safe, that their laws were strict. That violence in the palace was unthinkable. He tried to believe it. The path to the inner hall led through a corridor that was not built like a human corridor. Its walls were made of living material that shifted in color and texture as he passed. The air smelled faintly sweet, like rain on warm stone. Soft lights floated near the ceiling, moving slowly as if they were curious. Elias noticed something else, too. The corridor was reacting to him. When he felt anxious, the lights dimmed a little. When he forced his breathing to slow, the walls brightened. When his thoughts jumped to worst-case ideas, the colors trembled. It was like walking through a room that listened to the inside of his head. He swallowed and focused on a simple rhythm. Inhale, exhale, count his steps, feel the pressure of the floor, keep his mind steady. He had learned a lot about Zarathi culture before arriving. They were one of the oldest spacefaring species in this region of the galaxy. They had a strong connection to something humans could not fully explain, some combination of deep pattern recognition, emotion-sensing biology, and a kind of social intuition that looked almost psychic. Their architecture often responded to mood. Their songs were used in politics. Their most sacred texts were not written in words but in tones and colors. Elias had respected them. He still did. But he could not ignore the heavy feeling in the air today. Even the floating lights seemed less playful. The palace was quiet in a way that felt careful, like a room where someone had recently raised their voice. They passed a wide archway into a large chamber filled with court officials. Zarathi nobles stood in long lines, wearing shimmering robes that changed color with every movement. Their faces were smooth and symmetrical, their expressions controlled. But Elias could feel tension. He could see it in the way their hands held their sleeves tighter than usual. He could hear it in the way their soft conversations stopped when he entered. A ripple moved through the room. Human. Elias kept his shoulders straight. He kept walking. As he passed, he caught fragments of whispered speech, translated through his implant into simple English. Why him? The queen demanded it. It is not normal. She was furious. About the quiet zones, about the treaties, about the human ships. Elias' heart thumped. Quiet zones, that term had shown up in reports over the past few weeks. Regions of space where signals faded and long-range scans returned empty. It was strange, but strange things happened all the time in deep space. The embassy had treated it as a scientific curiosity, not a political emergency. But now the Zarathi court was shaking, and the queen had called for him personally. He reached the doors of the inner hall. They were enormous, made of crystal and metal that looked woven together. The surface of the doors showed moving patterns, like ripples on a frozen lake. Two attendants placed their hands against the doors and hummed a low tone. The doors answered with a brighter glow, then opened soundlessly. Elias stepped inside. The inner hall was bigger than any room he had ever seen. It was not built to impress with sharp lines or heavy decoration. It was built to create a feeling. The ceiling rose high and curved like the inside of a shell. Soft light flowed down the walls like water. The air felt clean and charged, as if the room was full of invisible energy. At the center stood the throne platform. It was not a chair, not exactly. It was a raised structure of crystal rings, like a nest of light. Within it, Queen Salith waited. Elias had seen recordings of her, but recordings did not prepare him for the real thing. Her presence filled the hall the way a storm fills a horizon. Her body was tall and slender, and her skin shimmered like pearl. Small points of light drifted around her like fireflies. Her eyes were deep and bright, and when she looked at Elias, it felt like being seen in a way he could not hide from. But what shocked him most was not her appearance. It was her expression. Queen Salith was angry, not quiet displeasure, not cold disappointment. This was a clear, burning fury held tightly under control. The floating lights around her trembled, as if they were nervous. The crystal rings of the throne glowed sharper than the rest of the hall, as if the structure was reacting to her mood. Elias stopped at the marked point on the floor and bowed in the human style. It felt small and awkward in such a place, but he did it anyway. "Your radiance," he said, keeping his voice respectful. The queen did not answer at once. Her gaze held him. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Elias realized he could hear his own heartbeat. Then she spoke, and her voice was not loud, but it carried. "Elias Mar," she said. "Yes, your radiance. You are the human who insists on writing things down, even when your translators fail." Elias blinked. "Yes, I keep notes, it helps." Some Zarathi believed writing was a weak way to store truth. They preferred memory and shared ritual, but Elias had always kept a notebook, paper, ink, a thing that did not depend on power or network. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly, as if measuring him. "You are the human who asked our engineers why our ships have no manual controls." Elias felt his face warm. "I asked because I wanted to understand. Humans like backups." The queen's lights flickered. It looked like a restrained flare of irritation, then something else, almost like worry. "And you are the human who stood in the Garden of Echoes and said the silence made you uncomfortable." Elias swallowed. The Garden of Echoes was a place where Zarathi leaders went to meditate. It was full of soft sounds and distant vibrations. Elias had visited once with a guide, and he had felt something strange there, like a missing note in a song. He had mentioned it in a report, not thinking it mattered. "Yes," he admitted, "it felt wrong." For a moment, the queen's anger seemed to twist into a different shape. The fury was still there, but behind it was exhaustion, fear maybe, a fear she refused to show to her court. "You did not lie," she said softly. Elias' throat tightened. "Your radiance, I don't understand why I'm here." The queen turned slightly, and the lights in the hall shifted. A circular display formed in the air, made of hovering crystal dust. It showed a star map. Elias recognized parts of it: trade routes, familiar systems, human colonies on the edge. Then the queen moved her hand, and a large region of the map faded into darkness. Not marked off with warning signs, not colored in danger red. It simply went blank. Stars vanished from the display as if they had never existed. Elias stared. "Is that a scan error?" "It is what you call a quiet zone," the queen said. Her voice had a sharp edge now. "But you call it that as if it is harmless, as if it is simply a strange weather pattern." "It is not." The map shifted again. More blank regions appeared like holes in fabric. Elias' mind raced. "How big are these zones?" The queen's gaze hardened. "They are growing." A cold feeling settled in Elias' chest. "Growing how fast?" "Faster than our models predicted," she said. "Faster than our philosophers believed possible. Faster than our faith can accept." Elias tried to keep his voice steady. "What do you think is causing it?" The queen lifted her chin, and her lights flared brighter. Her anger returned in a stronger wave. It was aimed at something far beyond Elias, but it still pressed on him like heat. "My court says it is a human weapon," she said. Elias' mouth went dry. "A weapon? No, humans don't." "They say your species broke the old balance," the queen continued, cutting him off. "They say your engines are crude and loud and disrespectful, and that you have disturbed what should not be disturbed." They say your explorers have touched things with careless hands. Elias felt the weight of those words. Humans were newcomers. They were inventive, fast, and sometimes reckless. Their ships were not as graceful as Zarathi ships. Their communication was blunt. They asked too many questions. Some older species found that annoying. But blaming humanity for a cosmic mystery was something else. Your radiance, Elias said carefully. Humanity has no technology that can erase stars. We can barely keep our outer stations funded. The Queen's eyes did not soften. I know what your species can build. That is why I am furious, Elias frowned. Because they're wrong about us. Because they are afraid, she said, her voice low. And when Zarathi are afraid, they seek a reason they can hold, a shape they can blame, a target that makes their fear feel like order. Elias understood that too well. Humans did the same thing. In crises, people look for someone to point at, something to name. The Queen stepped forward off the throne platform. The lights around her followed like a cautious swarm. She walked slowly, not threatening but purposeful. The hall seemed to tighten with her movement. Elias stayed still. He was aware of guards at the edges of the room, silent as shadows. Queen Salith stopped a few steps away. Now her presence was even stronger. Elias could see delicate lines in her skin that shimmered like fine cracks in crystal. He realized suddenly that she looked tired. Not physically weak, but strained, like a mind carrying too many heavy thoughts. I did not call you here to accuse you, she said. Elias' breath released in a slow exhale. Then why? The Queen's anger flickered again, but this time it was mixed with something that looked almost like relief. She stared at him as if he was the last light in a room going dark. Then she said the sentence that made Elias forget how to breathe. Your species is the only one left who can hear the universe screaming. The words hung in the air like a strange kind of thunder. Elias blinked. He almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so unexpected. What does that mean? The Queen turned away from him and looked back at the star map. Another blank region appeared, larger than before. The edge of the quiet zone looked jagged, like torn cloth. Most species in this region grew in gentle skies, she said. They evolved with stable stars, predictable seasons, and long peace. They built their cultures around harmony and their minds around trust in the pattern. Elias listened, uncertain. But humans, the Queen continued, came from a loud world. A world of storms and quakes and sudden endings. Your history is full of collapse and rebuilding. You do not assume the universe is kind. You assume it is dangerous and you still choose to live in it. Elias felt a strange mix of pride and discomfort. He had never thought of humans that way. Humans argued all the time. They made mistakes. They fought their own fears. They were not heroes by nature. But it was true that humans had learned to survive hard things. The Queen faced him again. We Zarathi built our greatness on listening to the universe, she said. We believed the universe spoke in a stable language. We believed that if we understood it, we could live in perfect balance. Her eyes narrowed. Now the universe is shouting and my people cannot hear it. Their minds refuse it. Their instruments refuse it. Their faith refuses it. Elias' voice came out quiet. And you think humans can hear it? I know you can, she said, because you already did. Elias' thoughts flashed back to the Garden of Echoes, the uncomfortable feeling, the missing note. He swallowed. I felt something strange, yes, but that could be imagination. The Queen's expression hardened again. It is not imagination, it is a warning. Elias' heart beat faster. A warning from what? The Queen lifted her hand and the star map zoomed outward, showing a wider area. The quiet zones were not random. They formed a pattern like a slow spiral. Elias leaned forward slightly, his fear turning into focus. That looks like movement. Yes, the Queen said. Something is passing through space, and where it passes, the song of the stars is muted. Elias felt his skin prickle. A ship, a phenomenon. The Queen's lights dimmed like a candle pulled away from wind. We do not know. That is why I called you. Elias looked at her, stunned. Me? You, she confirmed. Not because you are powerful, not because you are important in your own empire. Her gaze sharpened. But because you are human and because your mind does not turn away from fear. It turns toward it and asks, what do we do now? Elias wanted to argue, but he could not. He felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He was just an envoy, a negotiator, a man with a notebook and a stubborn habit of asking questions. Outside the hall, the quiet court waited. Whole star nations were likely watching Zarathi decisions, reading their mood like weather signs. Elias steadied himself. Your Radiance, he said slowly. If you want human help, we will need information, data, access, and permission to bring in our scientists. The Queen's anger flared for a moment like a blade of light. Elias thought he had pushed too far, but then she nodded. You will have what you need, she said, because if we do not understand this, our treaties will not matter. Our crowns will not matter. Our arguments about blame will not matter. She stepped closer again, and her voice dropped to something almost intimate, almost human in its honesty. The quiet is spreading, she said, and I fear that soon it will reach the places my people call home. Elias felt a chill, but he forced himself to keep speaking. Then we should start immediately. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Her fury was still present, but now it was pointed in the right direction, at the unknown threat, not at him. She raised her hand, and the hall's lights shifted to a brighter tone. The doors behind Elias opened. The sound of the court outside returned like a wave, but softer now, cautious. Queen Salith lifted her voice so the officials waiting beyond could hear. Let it be known, she said, that the human envoy will be granted access to the Resonance Archives and the Edge Observatories. A murmur rose from the court, shock, confusion, some fear. Elias stood still, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes. In that moment, he realized the Queen had just made a dangerous political move. She had placed trust in humanity when many in her court wanted blame. He turned his head slightly and saw faces in the crowd, some cold, some curious, some angry. He could almost feel the questions forming behind their calm masks. Why the human? What does he know? What if he fails? Elias looked back at the Queen. She met his gaze without blinking, and in her eyes he saw the true reason for her fury, not hatred, not pride, desperation. The universe was going quiet, and she had finally found someone who did not pretend it was normal. Elias took a slow breath, then stepped forward into the waiting court, already knowing that whatever came next would change the fate of more than one world. Far above, beyond the crystal sky, the stars continued to shine. But somewhere out there, an expanding silence was moving, quiet, patient, and hungry for answers. Elias did not sleep much that night. The guest chamber the Zarathi gave him was beautiful in a quiet, careful way. The walls glowed softly, changing color with the slow rhythm of his breathing. A window of clear crystal looked out into space itself, not just the sky of the planet. Beyond it, stars drifted like distant lanterns, but Elias' mind would not rest. The Queen's words echoed again and again in his thoughts. The universe is screaming. He sat on the edge of the smooth, sleeping platform and opened his notebook. The paper felt solid under his fingers. Real, simple. He wrote down everything he remembered from the meeting. The star map, the spiral pattern, the growing quiet zones, the way the Queen had looked tired instead of proud. Writing helped him think. At some point, a soft tone filled the room. A Zarathi aide appeared at the doorway, her form glowing pale blue in the low light. Envoy Mar, she said gently, the Queen requests your presence at the Edge Observatory. Elias closed his notebook and stood. Now, yes, she replied, transport is ready. The Edge Observatory was not on the throne world itself. It floated in space near the border of one of the quiet zones, a place where normal star signals grew weak and long-range sensors struggled to hold clear readings. Elias boarded a Zarathi vessel that looked more like a living creature than a machine. Its surface was smooth and curved, with faint lines of light moving across it like veins. Inside, the air felt warm and clean. There were others aboard, a tall, many-eyed scholar from the Nethari collective. A small, floating being made of soft light and sound from the Oran Choir, a metallic, spider-like machine intelligence that introduced itself simply as Archivist Unit 7. They were all experts in different fields: science, history, energy patterns, deep space navigation. And now Elias Mar, human envoy with a paper notebook, sat among them. The ship moved without a sound or jolt. Space outside the window stretched into long lines of light, then softened back into stars. The Nethari scholar spoke first. Its voice came through Elias' translator as a calm, layered tone. You are the human the Queen trusts, it said. That is unexpected. Elias gave a small, tired smile. It's unexpected to me, too. The Oran being drifted closer. Its voice sounded like wind through glass. Humans are loud, it said. Your ships, your signals, your stories, perhaps that is why she chose you. Elias shrugged. We don't try to be loud, we just don't know how to be quiet. Archivist Unit 7 tilted one of its metal limbs. Quiet is efficient, it said. Noise is waste. Elias looked at the machine. Sometimes waste keeps you alive. Extra power, extra food, extra air. Humans like having more than we need just in case. The machine paused, processing. That logic is inefficient. Maybe, Elias replied, but it's kept us going so far. The ship slowed. Outside, space looked different. The stars ahead were dimmer, not gone but distant like lights seen through fog. The black between them felt deeper, heavier. This is the edge of the quiet zone, the Nethari scholar said. Elias felt a strange pressure in his chest. Not pain, more like standing in a room where sound had just stopped. The edge observatory came into view. It was a wide ring-shaped structure floating alone in the dark. Lights glowed along its surface, steady but subdued. Inside, the station felt colder. The air was still. The usual hum of machines was softer, as if even technology was being careful. They entered a central chamber filled with instruments. Screens, floating displays, crystal arrays, and light patterns covered the walls. Scientists and analysts from many species worked in silence. A Zerathi coordinator approached Elias. "Envoy Mar, the Queen has granted you access to all readings." A display lit up in front of him. It showed waves of data, energy levels, signal strength, space-time distortions. Most of it meant little to him at first glance, but one thing stood out. A line of human text scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "Analog sensor input stable." Elias leaned closer. "That's from a human probe?" "Yes," the coordinator said. "Your devices are unusual. They rely less on deep space field connection and more on physical measurement." Elias nodded. "We use simple tools, radio waves, mechanical backups, things that don't need a lot of cosmic cooperation to work." The Zerathi tilted her head. "It is stubborn." Elias smiled slightly. "That's a nice word for it." They moved to another station, the Orin being hovered near a glowing pattern of sound waves. "Our senses fail here," it said. "The deeper we go, the less we feel. It is like being slowly wrapped in silence." Archivist Unit 7 projected a map. "Advanced prediction models cannot define the source. Data input degrades beyond this boundary." The Nethari scholar folded its many hands. "We are blind," it said. Elias looked at the map again. The spiral pattern was clearer now. The quiet zone was not random. It followed a path, slow and steady. "Can we send something into it?" Elias asked. "We have," the coordinator replied. "Drones, signals, energy pulses, most fail to return data. Some return strange results." She brought up a new display. A faint, broken signal appeared. It looked like static at first, but Elias noticed something. "There's a rhythm," he said. The others leaned closer. The static rose and fell in a slow pattern, not regular like a machine, more like breathing. Archivist Unit 7 ran a quick analysis. "Pattern detected, probability of random noise low," the Orin being drifted back, its glow dimming. "It feels like a voice, but very far away." Elias' heart beat faster. "Can we amplify it?" "We have tried," the coordinator said. "Most of our systems lose the signal when we increase power." Elias thought for a moment. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a small device. A simple human-made signal booster. Old design, mostly physical components. "This is basic," he said. "But it doesn't rely on the same kind of field systems." The Zerathi hesitated. "It may not be compatible." "Let's find out," Elias replied. They connected the device. The display flickered. Then the signal grew clearer. The room went silent as everyone watched. The static softened into something else. A low, deep sound filled the chamber, not a voice in any language, more like a long, tired hum. The Orin being's glow pulsed. "It is hurting," it said softly. The Nethari scholar bowed its head. "This is not an attack," it said. "This is a call." Elias felt his throat tighten. "A call for what?" The sound changed slightly. The rhythm became more complex. Archivist Unit 7 translated the pattern into visual form. Shapes appeared on the screen, not words, not images, concepts, connection, weight, holding. "Strain," the Zerathi coordinator whispered. "It is something very old." Elias stared at the display. "It feels like it's holding something together." The Nethari nodded. "The spiral pattern, the path, it may be moving along lines of stress in space itself." Archivist Unit 7 processed rapidly. "Hypothesis, entity functions as a stabilizing force for large-scale space-time structures." Elias blinked. "You're saying it's like a support beam for the universe?" "Metaphor accepted," the machine replied, the Orin being dimmed further. "And it is failing." A heavy silence filled the room. Elias ran a hand through his hair. So when it passes through a region, space goes quiet because it's tired. It can't hold everything anymore. The coordinator looked at him. If that is true, then when it stops. Elias finished the thought. Things could fall apart. The room felt colder. Elias stepped back from the display and took a slow breath. Okay, then this isn't about fighting something, it's about helping it. The Nethari scholar tilted its head. Help something that may be older than our civilizations. Why not? Elias said. Humans help old bridges, old cities, old machines. Just because something is ancient doesn't mean you let it collapse. Archivist Unit 7 paused. Assistance protocols for cosmic-scale entities are not in my database. Elias gave a small, tired laugh. They're not in ours either, but we make things up as we go. That's kind of our style. They worked for hours. They tested signals, patterns, frequencies. Every advanced system struggled, but the human devices, simple and physical, kept picking up the hum. Elias began to notice something else. When he thought about the sound, when he focused on it as something alive instead of something to measure, the signal grew a little stronger. He didn't say it at first. It sounded foolish even to him, but eventually he spoke. Does anyone else feel like it reacts to attention? The Orin being drifted closer. We feel that too, it said. When we listen, it becomes clearer. The Nethari nodded slowly. This is not just energy, it is presence. Archivist Unit 7 added, data suggests feedback loop between observer focus and signal stability. Elias leaned back in his chair. So it's not just physics, it's connection. They sent a report to the Queen, a careful one, no wild claims. Just patterns, data, and one simple conclusion. This was not a weapon. This was not an enemy. This was something holding on. Later, as the station drifted at the edge of the quiet, Elias stood by the window and looked into the dim stars. The spiral path was invisible to the eye, but he could imagine it now. A long, tired journey through the dark. His communicator chimed. The Queen's image appeared. Her face looked calmer, but the strain was still there. You found something, she said. Yes, Elias replied. We think it's not causing the quiet. We think it's suffering from it. Her lights flickered softly. Explain. Elias chose his words carefully. It's like a bridge that's been holding up a road for a very long time. The road keeps getting heavier. The bridge is starting to crack. The Queen was silent for a moment. Then she said, My people do not know how to help a bridge. We build new roads. Elias nodded. Humans patch things. We reinforce. We share the load. Her gaze sharpened. And how do you share the load of the universe? Elias looked back at the stars. We don't know yet, but we can try to get others to help carry it. The Queen studied him. Then slowly she bowed her head. Then humanity will lead this effort, she said. Not as rulers. Not as judges, but as builders of support. The call ended. Elias stood there, feeling the weight of what had just happened. A human from a young and often divided species had been asked to help hold up something older than empires. Behind him, the low, tired hum of the cosmic signal continued. And for the first time, Elias felt certain of one thing. It wasn't asking for power. It was asking not to be alone. The first human ship arrived 3 days later. It did not look impressive compared to the smooth, glowing vessels of the Zarathi or the elegant spiral craft of the Nethari. It was boxy, gray, and covered in old paint marks and repair plates. Long antennas stuck out from its sides like thin metal branches. But when it entered the space near the edge observatory, its signals stayed clear. Elias watched from the main window as the ship slowed and docked. The name on its side read HSS Far Reach. A group of humans stepped out into the station. Engineers, scientists, and signal experts. Some looked tired, some looked excited, all of them looked curious. Their leader, a woman with short, dark hair and a calm voice, walked up to Elias and offered her hand. Dr. Mara Chen, she said, we got your message. It was strange, but also interesting. Elias shook her hand. That's kind of our specialty now. Around them, alien observers watched closely, some with open interest, some with quiet doubt. Dr. Chen looked at the displays showing the quiet zone and the spiral path. So this thing isn't attacking, she said. It's holding something together and running out of strength. That's what it feels like, Elias replied. She nodded slowly. Then we don't need a shield, we need a support system. The words spread quickly through the station. Support system. Human teams began working right away. They did not try to build one big, powerful machine. Instead, they pulled out boxes of small devices. Simple transmitters, signal repeaters, energy stabilizers. Most of them were not advanced by galactic standards. They were built from parts that could be fixed with basic tools and simple instructions. The Nethari scholar watched in confusion. "Why so many small units?" it asked. "A single large structure would be more efficient." Dr. Chen answered, "One big thing can break. 1,000 small things can fail, and the rest still work." The Orin being drifted closer, glowing softly. "Like a choir," it said, "many voices, one song." The humans liked that idea. They began placing the first devices along the edge of the quiet zone. Zarathi ships helped carry them. Nethari navigation craft mapped safe paths. Orin sound guides adjusted the signal tones. Each device was simple. It listened for the low, tired hum. Then it sent out a soft response. Not loud, not demanding, just steady, a presence. Elias stood in the control room as the first line of devices activated. The signal on the screen changed. The hum did not disappear, but it stopped fading. Dr. Chen leaned forward. "It's like it noticed us." Archivist Unit 7 processed the data. Signal stability increased by 3%. 3% did not sound like much, but in a system this large, it felt like a small miracle. More species began to arrive. A trade fleet from the Velen Union brought power cells. A group of scholars from the Tesh archives shared ancient star maps. Even a distant and private species known for staying out of galactic affairs sent a single ship with one message. "We will listen too." The Queen watched from her throne world as reports came in. The court, once full of fear and blame, slowly changed its tone. Not everyone trusted the human plan. Some still wanted a clear answer, a clear enemy, a clear victory, but the quiet zones did not grow as fast anymore, and that was something no one could ignore. Elias spent most of his time moving between teams, explaining ideas, translating between cultures, and writing everything down. His notebook filled with sketches of device layouts, notes about signal patterns, and small personal thoughts he never shared. At one point, he sat alone in a quiet corner of the station, staring at a page that simply said, "It feels like we are building a hand for the universe to hold." He closed the notebook and went back to work. As the network grew, something else happened. The signal changed again. It began to respond, not just with a hum but with slight variations. Soft rises and falls that matched the rhythm of the devices, like a tired being matching its breathing to someone sitting beside it. The Orin being glowed brighter when this happened. "It is aware," it said. "It knows it is not alone now." The Nethari scholar recorded everything. "This will change how we understand existence," it said. "We believed the universe was a place. It may be a presence." Elias did not know about that. But he knew what it felt like to sit with someone who was exhausted and afraid. Sometimes you did not need to fix them, you just needed to stay. One cycle later, the Queen visited the Edge Observatory. Her arrival was quiet. No large court, no long ceremony. Just her and a small group of aides. She walked through the control room and stopped in front of the main display. The spiral pattern was still there, but its edges were softer now, less sharp, less broken. "You have done this," she said. Elias shook his head. "We didn't do it alone." She turned and looked at the mixed group of species working together. Humans, Zarathi, Nethari, Orin, Velen, and others whose names Elias was still learning. "This is not how the galaxy works," the Queen said softly. "It is not how it has ever worked." Dr. Chen smiled. "Maybe it's time for a new way." The Queen studied the humans closely. Their tools were not beautiful, their methods were not elegant, their plans changed often, sometimes in the middle of action, but they did not stop. "You build like you live," the Queen said. "Always preparing for things to go wrong." Elias nodded. "Because they usually do." She looked back at the display. "My people built for harmony, for balance that never breaks." "And when it does?" Elias asked. The Queen did not answer right away. Later that day, a problem appeared. One section of the network began to fail. Devices went dark. The signal weakened. Panic rippled through the station. Archivist Unit 7 calculated worst-case scenarios. "If failure spreads, stabilization effect may collapse." Dr. Chen and her team rushed to the area in small ships. Elias went with them. They found the problem quickly. A strange energy surge from the quiet zone had overwhelmed the devices. Not an attack, more like a wave of exhaustion from the cosmic presence itself. The human devices had been listening. They had not expected to be leaned on. Dr. Chen looked at the data. "It's pushing back, not on purpose, it's just heavy." Elias floated in the ship, watching the dim stars. "Then we need to give it more places to lean." They didn't try to make the devices stronger. They made more of them. Zarathi factories opened their production lines. Velen traders rerouted shipments. Even Archivist Unit 7 began designing simple units that could be built by almost any species. Soon, the network spread wider. A web of small lights in the dark. The energy surge passed. The signal stabilized again. Back at the observatory, the Queen watched the updated map. The quiet zone's edge stopped moving. For the first time since the crisis began, it did not grow. The court reacted with shock. Some Zarathi leaders fell to their knees. Others stared in silence. A few wept openly, their glowing forms dimming and brightening in uneven patterns. The Queen turned to Elias. "You did not conquer it," she said. "You did not command it. You did not even fully understand it." Elias shrugged. "We just showed up." She studied him. "That may be the most powerful thing your species does." News spread across the stars. The humans were not building weapons. They were building a network of listening. Some species laughed at first. Some called it foolish. But when the quiet zones slowed near their own systems, they stopped laughing. They joined. Each culture added something. The Orin added sound patterns that carried emotion. The Nethari added navigation beacons that followed the spiral path. The Zarathi added energy harmonics that stabilized the devices without overpowering them. The network became something more than human. It became shared. One quiet moment, Elias stood with the Queen in a viewing chamber. The crystal window showed the dark, star-filled sky. Tiny points of light marked the locations of the network devices, like a second, softer set of stars. "You have changed my people," the Queen said. Elias looked at her. "We didn't mean to." "Meaning to is not required," she replied. "Only doing." She turned and faced him fully. Then, to Elias' shock, she lowered herself. The Zarathi Queen knelt. Every being in the room froze. "My people look to me for the way forward," she said, "and I look to you." Elias' heart pounded. "Your radiance, you don't have to." "I do," she interrupted. "Because the galaxy must learn what you have shown us," he swallowed. "Which is, that strength is not always loud," she said, "and leadership is not always standing above." The moment spread quickly. Images of the Queen kneeling before a human envoy traveled across communication networks and star systems. Some saw it as hope. Some saw it as the end of an old age. That night, Elias sat alone again, writing in his notebook. "We didn't come to be heroes," he wrote. "We came because someone asked for help. Maybe that's enough." The low hum from the cosmic presence still filled the station, but now it was different, not just tired, grateful. Elias closed his notebook and looked out at the web of small lights in the dark. For the first time, the universe did not feel like a cold, silent place. It felt like a very large room where many voices had finally decided to speak together. And somewhere far beyond sight, something ancient and heavy was no longer carrying its burden alone. The galaxy did not change all at once. It changed slowly, in small moments that were easy to miss if you were not looking for them. On distant trade routes, captains began to notice that their long-range signals no longer faded near the quiet zones. On research stations, instruments that once returned empty readings now showed soft patterns again. On worlds that had felt a strange, deep unease in their skies, the feeling slowly lifted. The network of small lights in space continued to grow. From a distance, it looked like a second set of stars, drawn by many hands instead of nature. Elias stood in the main viewing chamber of the Edge Observatory, watching the map update in real time. The spiral path was still there, but now it glowed with gentle points of connection. The quiet zones had not vanished, but they had stopped spreading. In some places, they had even pulled back. Dr. Chen leaned against a railing beside him. "We're getting reports from 3 systems beyond the original edge," she said. "The signal is reaching them now." Elias smiled. "That's good news." "It's strange news," she replied. "We've never done anything like this before, not on this scale." Elias looked around the room. Humans and aliens worked side by side, pointing at screens, sharing tools, and arguing over small details in half-translated sentences. It was messy, loud, full of mistakes. And it was working. The Queen arrived later that day. This time she did not come as a distant ruler. She walked into the station like a visitor. Her lights glowed softly instead of sharply. Her aides followed at a respectful distance. When she reached the viewing chamber, she stopped and looked at the star map. "The spiral is changing," she said. "Yes," Elias replied. "It's slowing down, and the signal it's stronger." The Queen closed her eyes for a moment. The small lights around her dimmed, then brightened. I can feel it, she said, not as a sound, as a presence, like a great weight that is no longer pressing so hard. Dr. Chen glanced at Elias. We think the network isn't just supporting it, she said. It's teaching it something. The Queen turned. Teaching? Dr. Chen nodded. Before it was alone, doing all the work. Now it's part of a system. It's learning how to share. Elias thought about that. Like a team. Like a family, the Orin being said from nearby, its glow warm and steady. The Queen looked at the Orin, then back at the map. My people ruled the stars for a very long time, she said. We believed leadership meant guiding everything from above. Elias waited. Now I see something different, the Queen continued. You do not guide from above, you stand inside the problem. Elias scratched the back of his head. That's usually because we fell into it by accident. The Queen's lights flickered in what Elias had learned was Zarathi amusement. Across the galaxy, reactions to the network were still mixed. Some governments welcomed it. They sent ships, supplies, and people. Others were suspicious. They asked hard questions. What if this cosmic presence becomes dependent? What if humans gain influence through this system? What if the network fails? Elias understood those fears. Humans had their own history of helping and harming at the same time. Good intentions did not always lead to good outcomes. But every time a quiet zone slowed near a nervous system, those fears softened just a little. One day, Archivist Unit 7 approached Elias with a new report. Signal variation detected, the machine said. The cosmic presence is initiating structured response patterns. Elias blinked. It's talking back. Not in language, the machine replied. In concept. A display lit up. Soft shapes and colors filled the screen. They shifted slowly, forming patterns that felt intentional, the Orin being drifted closer. It is expressing, it said, gratitude, relief, and curiosity. Elias felt a strange lump in his throat. Curiosity about what? About us, the Nethari scholar said. About the small, loud beings who chose to sit beside it instead of stepping away. The Queen watched in silence. Then she spoke, her voice low. My people always believed the universe was something to understand, she said, never something to be understood by. Elias looked at the display. Looks like it's trying. The response patterns grew more complex over time. The cosmic presence began to adjust its path slightly, moving toward areas where the network was strongest. The quiet zones in those regions shrank faster. It was not following commands. It was following connection. The galaxy took notice. On the Zarathi throne world, the Great Council gathered. Representatives from dozens of species filled the crystal hall. The air was thick with energy and quiet conversation. At the center stood the Queen, and beside her, Elias, he felt very small. Hollow displays showed the network, the spiral path, and the changing quiet zones. Data scrolled in many languages. A Velen representative spoke first. The human method has stabilized several key trade routes. We support its expansion. A Tesh scholar followed. This changes our understanding of cosmic structure. We must continue. A taller, sharp-featured being from a powerful star empire raised a hand. And what happens when humans control this system? It asked. When every world depends on a network they designed? Murmurs spread through the hall. Elias stepped forward before the Queen could speak. We don't control it, he said. His voice was not loud, but it was clear. We started it, that's not the same thing. The sharp-featured being tilted its head. Your people built the first devices. Yes, Elias said, and now everyone builds them, anyone can. We share the designs, we fix them together. If humans disappear tomorrow, the network will still exist. The hall grew quiet. We didn't make this to be in charge, Elias continued. We made it because something was hurting, and we knew how it felt to be alone in that. The Queen watched him, her lights steady. The representative studied Elias for a long moment. Then it lowered its head slightly. Then we will contribute. One by one, others agreed. The network became official, not owned, not ruled, maintained by a shared council. Elias felt a strange sense of relief. The weight was no longer just on human shoulders. Later, back at the observatory, he stood alone by the window again. The stars outside looked brighter than before, though he knew that was probably just his imagination. His communicator chimed. The Queen appeared. You spoke well today, she said. I was terrified, Elias admitted. She nodded. So was I the first time I stood before my people as Queen. They shared a quiet moment. You once told me your people patch old bridges, the Queen said. I have been thinking about that. Elias smiled. We're not very good at letting things fall even when they probably should. The Queen's lights dimmed slightly. Some things are worth holding up a little longer, she said. Behind Elias, the low hum of the cosmic presence filled the station. But now it was different. It carried layers, soft echoes of the network's many voices, the Orin being floated by, glowing warmly. It is singing now, it said. Not just one sound, many. Elias closed his eyes for a moment and listened. He could not hear it with his ears. But he felt it, a sense of space that was no longer empty. Days turned into weeks. The quiet zones continued to shrink, not disappear but soften, like scars fading instead of fresh wounds. The cosmic presence began to settle into a slower, gentler path. It no longer moved like something running out of strength. It moved like something learning to rest. One evening, Dr. Chen joined Elias at the window. "Do you ever think about how strange this is?" she asked. "All the time," he replied. "We came out here to explore," she said. "To map stars, to find new places. We didn't expect to end up helping the universe breathe." Elias laughed softly. "Yeah, that wasn't in the mission briefing." She grew serious. "Do you think it will remember us?" Elias thought about the patterns on the screen. The way the signal changed when people paid attention. "I think it already does," he said. The Queen later sent a message that would be recorded in history. It was short and simple. "We ruled the stars. Humans taught them to answer back." The words spread across worlds and cultures. Some took them as praise, others as warning. Most took them as a challenge, to listen, to respond, to not turn away when something vast and unknown showed signs of strain. On his last day at the Edge Observatory, Elias packed his small bag. His notebook was thick now, full of notes, drawings, and thoughts that would take years. Chinese letter. He took one last look at the star map. The network glowed softly. The spiral path was calm. The Queen met him at the docking bay. "You will return to your people," she said. "Yes," Elias replied, "and tell them what happened here." "What will you say?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "That the universe is big and old and sometimes tired. And that it helps if someone sits with it instead of trying to fix it from far away." The Queen nodded. "A simple truth, often the hardest kind to learn." As Elias boarded the human ship, he looked back one last time. The Zarathi Queen stood tall, her lights bright against the dark. The ship pulled away. The station became a small shape among many stars. Far out in the vastness, the cosmic presence continued its slow journey. But now it moved through a galaxy filled with quiet signals of care. Small lights, soft sounds, shared effort. The universe was no longer screaming, it was being answered. And on a small, blue world far away, humans would soon hear a story about how they had helped something bigger than themselves. Not with strength, not with command, but with the simple, stubborn choice to stay and listen.